Welcome to another episode of Media Industries, the talk show that brings the classroom to the industry and the industry to you. I'm Nicholas Boston. I'm a professor in the Department of Journalism and Media Studies at Lehman College of the City University of New York. Media Studies is one of the courses I teach. Students in the class who are learning about the corporate structures and business strategies in the media industries produce this talk show. They invite professionals from across the media industries of print, broadcast, and digital, as well as industries that intersect with media, such as fashion and music, to come on and discuss their jobs and the states of their industries. Students take this opportunity to apply the theoretical knowledge they're gaining in the classroom. This is our third season of Media Industries, the talk show. We have a lineup of 6 episodes, each bringing you an eye-opening conversation with a different professional who makes the media that capture our world. Media Industries is recorded in our state-of-the-art studio in the Multimedia Center at Lehman College and delivered to you here on BronxNet Television. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Media Industries.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Media Industries, the talk show. My name is Jacqueline Triss. Today's show closes the season of Media Industries, and we are ecstatic to welcome our very distinguished guest, Todd Coleman, on-screen personality, magazine editor, photographer, and style influencer, to discuss food media. Mr. Coleman has worked for major culinary foodie media platforms such as The Food Network, Tasting Table, and Sabre magazine. He has produced for television, written and edited for magazines, and also transitioned into photography and food styling. He knows how to capture food and food culture through the lenses of his camera. Welcome, Todd Coleman. So, Todd, we know you've worked at Food Network, Sabre, and Tasting Table, but before all of this, where did Todd Coleman begin? Tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, professionally, I started off as a cook or as a dishwasher when I was 15. Fell in love with the kitchen, and I worked in 10 years in restaurants, and then went to culinary school. So everything I do is through the lens of food, and whether that's travel or anything that I've done. But it all stems from my experience and love for cooking.
And when was like that exact moment that you were like, this is the industry I want to follow? I want to stay in the culinary industry.
It was probably my first day as a dishwasher at
Really?
this restaurant. Yeah, it was really exciting. I wasn't any good at it. People were yelling at me, and I tried to figure out how to come back. I tried to figure out how to be better at it, and saw what was happening. It was very exciting, very exciting. And so, I started begging the chef to teach me things, and I wanted to become a cook instead of washing dishes. And although I loved that too, I hadn't really worked. I didn't know how to work.
So
it was it was a big learning curve.
So like right off the bat, you decided to go into culinary school, or were you like?
No. I was 15. I didn't go to culinary school until I was 23 or 20. I was basically 24.
And where did you go?
I went to the CIA upstate, Culinary Institute of America. But that once I graduated, I was pretty much done with professional cooking.
That's it?
Yeah. I went into, I became a private chef the way I ended up in media was I didn't go to school for it. I didn't even really necessarily try to get into it. I was working for a family in the Hamptons as their chef. We're very wealthy, and they knew a lot of influential people, and one of them was a woman named Molly O'Neill, who was a food writer. And at that time, in the late 90s, her brother, Paul O'Neill, was on the Yankees, and every Sunday in the Sunday Times Magazine, the food article was hers.
Okay.
And before her, I think had just been Craig Claiborne. So she was very well known.
Okay.
And they were kind of a power duo. You'd hear people in restaurants talking about, oh, I think Paul's sister's a food writer, or did you know that Molly's brother's in the Yankees? You know, it was like people talked about, kind of, not forgotten, but not as talked about anymore. This is before blogs and everything, so like
before-
to be in the Times
It was a
every
big thing.
Sunday. She would go to book signings in Milwaukee, and there would be 500 people there. That doesn't happen anymore.
So like now, like you did that, and now you have your personal name brand out there in the food media world. So you're known as Todd the Garlic Guy. So where does this nickname come from?
Well, I didn't know I had that nickname, but I mean,
You do.
in 2011, when I was executive food editor at Saveur, I was there for 8 years. In 2011, it's not like now where there's a lot of food video.
Yeah.
Basically, everyone wanted to make video, felt like they needed to make video, but they didn't know how. It was very expensive. They weren't sure where to put it.
So you're like the OG creator of like
Well,
the
so
viral video.
everyone was talking about viral video, wanting things to go viral, but not a lot had gone viral in the food space. And so I knew this garlic trick, and very randomly decided to. We wanted to do some videos. I said, "Oh, I'll do the garlic trick." I had this kid come in and shoot it. He was hand holding a DSLR. It wasn't lit. It wasn't a high production thing, and Gonda, who was in charge of the web at the time at Saveur, she really felt like there was something there in the video. I wasn't paying attention to it. I did it. She had it edited. I didn't see it. And she...
And was this your trick, or like was this someone else's trick that you tried to copy, right?
I'm never going to tell anyone where the trick came from. It's not now it's a well-known trick. And a lot of people go on the Today Show and use it and all that, but it was not very well known then. Very few people, I think, knew it. But I've decided I will never tell anyone where I learned it. But it went
Like
viral.
It's a magician. You're keeping your tricks. That's fine.
On Vimeo, which was not a place for things to go viral. So it was very heavily shared, and I watched it go up and up and up. And now it's all over. And it was in the in New York Magazine in the high-low grid, like what's highbrow, what's lowbrow. But now, 6 years later, it does sort of stand out as
The original.
one of the more original food viral videos. Yeah, I've been in meetings where people say, "Oh, we really will want to do stuff like this," and I'm like, "That's me." I've lost a little bit of weight since then, so people don't recognize me, but they recognize the trick more than they recognize me. I was eating at Union Square Cafe before it moved. I was eating, and the guy next to me said, "You're Todd the Garlic Guy."
Did they really call you that?
But that's only really happened once.
So like now that we're talking about terms and like stuff like that,
Yeah.
what do you think of the term food porn?
Food porn.
Yes.
Well, it's been said so many times that I'm desensitized to it. It doesn't really have that much meaning. I mean, it was a slightly shocking thing to say 17 years ago, 18 years ago, but and now it's taken a whole new meaning where something is Instagrammable or food is one of the biggest niches in social media. So you have like pizzas crusted with little pizzas and all that. So food porn, I think, is part of the regular vernacular now. I think you could say it to your grandmother and she wouldn't blush.
She wouldn't.
Whereas it was a little edgy to say a long time ago.
And is this like how all media professionals like view it, or is this just your opinion, or like how do other people?
Well, food porn is like a luscious ice cream drip or something that is really conjures up something just beyond like, oh, that looks pretty good. I want to something that looks really yummy, creamy, delicious, over the top.
So like let's backtrack a little. So like right off the bat after culinary school, you went into like being a private chef. But what was your opportunity to get into like that food media world?
Yeah. So I went to work for another family and who lived in the Waldorf Tower, which was a very funny job. But in fact, that's the only time I ever saw Trump was there. But he was working for them, and the first family, her name was actually, the wife from the family's name is Brooke Kroger, and she's actually a dean of journalism at NYU. She, I guess, I had my own room there, and she, without me knowing, she saw that I used to type poetry and stories on this old Underwood typewriter, and Molly was looking for somebody. They were great friends. They had worked at the, I forget the name, it's a paper in Long Island. It's still around.
That's
Anyway,
okay.
they had worked together at a newspaper. And she said, oh, well, maybe Todd would be interested in this job. So she called me. I wasn't that interested. I was interested, but not overly interested. I showed up for the job interview and changed to my chef whites, and I had to cook as part of the trail for this job. And they were all really shocked because nobody in their world acted like that. You know, I was sort of coming from the chef world and then acted that way. But yeah, I got hired by her to develop and test recipes for the New York Times Sunday Magazine article. And then she also did lots of other things, wrote for the Daily, did all these other things. So I got involved in that. And then she started a website.
And that's where you got.
It's called One Big Table. It was in 1999. And that's where I started to write articles, cooking dinner parties.
So you would say you didn't complete like any internships
For journalism?
for journalism and like
No.
no.
The only internship I ever did was for cooking. And it was at the Aqua Grill, which is in 96. It was still there. It's on 6th Avenue. And no, the food, being able to cook and being professional and very practiced in that was my entree into that. So they first needed someone to develop recipes, which I was not any good at in the beginning. I would make like a coleslaw that was enough for 15 people. I wasn't used to making small quantities, so I had a lot to learn in that.
So do you think like internships are important in like for us students that are trying to like get our start in the media world, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The most of the people that I've seen, whether it was at a magazine or the Food Network, who end up getting hired, you know, if that's what you want. So many people now don't want a full-time job, but I've always been a huge proponent in my life and career of getting a full-time job versus being a freelance.
Freelancer.
Yeah, but 100%. That's how you get to know people. Get this.
You network.
Yeah. I mean, you're a good example of that. Like, we wouldn't have met if you hadn't done an internship at the Food Network. That's just another form of networking. There's other ways of doing it, but there you can prove yourself. People always hire the people they know that can do the job. Even if, like, technically someone might be more qualified or have more experience out there in the world, it's very hard to find them.
And how important do you think is to seek mentorship for someone starting out in the industry?
Well, what's a mentorship?
You know, like a mentor, someone to like basically like lead you.
Right. Well, I've heard a lot about this where people actually ask people to be their mentor. Like, will you mentor me? I've heard about that in a lot of the business world. There are a lot of people I consider my mentors, but I didn't ask them to be that. I was just at the job. But I think in the way that I've heard it described lately, yeah, absolutely. Any advice, any help, you can learn skills from them. They can introduce you to people. Because largely you could be the best at whatever, but if you don't know anyone in the industry, you can't get the work. I mean, it's a little bit different now with social media, that you can be your own person, be your own brand, be your own company without having all this structure.
But still, you always need someone to kind of help you.
Yeah, I mean, you have to learn, and it's better to learn through somebody than, I mean, I go crazy when I want to learn something, so I'll read every book there is. I'll call up people. You can never, I'm a huge proponent of that. I just haven't exactly done it that way.
So you have produced shows for the Food Network.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, well, that was in the, I guess a long time ago now. a lot more gray in my beard. But I was a culinary producer. That was at the time at the Food Network, where the majority of the program were these dump and stir shows. They were live to tape, and we would do the in-house at the Food Network. There were, at that time, 4 production teams that worked there full-time as employees. And so each one had an executive producer, a culinary producer, and then...
and what would you say like the biggest differences between like a culinary producer and a regular producer?
Well, I'm a big proponent of don't put me in this category and say all I know is food or all I know is this. So all through my career, I wanted to prove that I'm more than just that. So a culinary producer was technically is somebody who understood the food and as part of the team. Like, didn't need to be an expert in TV, but I made it that I was also an expert in TV and also expert in shooting, and because that's like, Sometimes content producers are like, well, that's not how you would chop an onion, but that's kind of boring to me, right? It just, sometimes a content producer is somebody who does all the prep behind the scenes for the talent and a little bit of styling. But a producer really is more about like calling talent, coming up with story ideas, making sure the trains run on time, making sure the food looks good, making sure everyone shows up on time. It's like you're producing the thing, making the thing happen.
And like, what was one of your like greatest challenges while producing?
Well, those shows were very difficult. So like Sarah's Secrets, Sarah Moulton show, we would do in 2.5 weeks, 45 episodes.
Oh, wow.
So some days we would do 4 episodes, starting very early in the morning. And the worst possible thing was to stop tape. So there was a director in the control room who came from news, who would stand up yelling and screaming, camera 1, ready, camera 2, take, like putting the show together while it was happening, live to tape. So to have to stop, what a cell phone went off or thing, that was the biggest problem.
Oh,
so
wow.
you go, opening the oven and the swap out wasn't there, things like that would happen like that. It would be a fireable offense almost. So just making sure, I had notebooks, and I still have them, full of like, I would write down everything that needed to be done. I would fill up a whole notebook, and I would go through crossing through things every day and reorganizing it. The biggest challenge is staying organized.
Staying organized? And, like,
Because it was
staying on task?
a lot. Because there would be, each episode would cost, at that time, like, maybe $35,000 to produce.
Oh, wow.
So if you screwed it up or it couldn't run for some reason, that was a big problem.
So after Food Network, you headed over to Sabur as an editor. Can you tell us a little bit about the transition from television to print editorial?
I did a lot of things in between that, but the way that I ended up learning more about magazines was I went to a Martha Stewart magazine called Everyday Food.
Okay.
That was my transition to magazines. But all these jobs are about proving that you can do the work, that you work very hard, that you have the knowledge, whether it's food, travel, that you're willing to do what it takes to get it done. You're willing to take criticism, and you're willing to work whatever hours it takes to get it done. So within that, I had a base built up where I knew food, loved cooking. I didn't just know it. I don't just know it. It's my passion, right? So no one I've ever worked with would say I was anything but passionate about what I was doing. So it's just learning how to tell those stories in a different way. But at Saveur, I taught myself how to become a photographer. Like really, really taught myself. Like, I would.
And what was like that motivation to be the one behind the camera when you were at Sabur?
Part of it was I was already producing shoots on location, whether that was Cleveland or India, with other photographers, with a photographer and a writer, or I was producing the shoots in-house that were all the food that we were shooting, the recipe shots. And so I knew that I ran everyone in the test kitchen plus doing that, so I knew what it took, and I was just kind of eager to figure it out myself. But one of the motivations was actually in spite of a lot of the photographers I worked with, because we would go somewhere, like we'd be in China, there were these photojournalistic types who had gone like to school for it. They brought 2 lenses and a camera body, a 50 and a 35. They didn't bring any lights, so if we had to go into the basement to shoot the food, they were like, I can't shoot this, the light's bad. And it's like, we flew here for this.
So you were like,
why didn't you
I
bring
want to
it?
like take this and do it myself.
Yeah, I started to get really spiteful of them. I felt like they were very good. A lot of them had come from National Geographic. They were very good at shooting on the streets.
But you were like, I can be better.
Yeah. I've done that with most everything. Like, I'm taking that away from you. And there are a couple of them who are still to this day very angry with me, feel like I stole their job. But so I learned right away to shoot with lights. And I learned by
just doing it.
The main thing I did was I went to
Experience.
Turkey with the lights, and I shot a lot of bad pictures, like 10,000 bad pictures, until I was like, oh, okay, I can see the lighting start to come together.
So from Sabur, you went on to a fairly new company named Tasting Table, a digital media company as a creative director. Can you tell us a little bit about like the experiences you faced taking your skills aesthetic to like the digital platform?
Right. Well, that was one of the best things I could have done at that time because it was strictly digital. So the problem with print is they have their business model that they can't completely let go of, and then they were only dabbling in digital, And as that's gone on up and up, they still had both. So it was strictly digital and very business oriented. So everyone was together in one office. There was no church and state. Some of the best things we work on, we knew it was sponsored by Lexus. So it was like the Lexus whatever thing, and we figured out what the story was around that. So there was none of this like idea, because now you need to understand how things are being paid for as
sponsorships and like
they were always being paid for.
But now it's being more like product placement. It's being there, like we see it.
Not necessarily product placement, but just like if there's an ad that's an adjacency or whatever, but it being part of the process, understanding, just being more realistic about it.
So now that we hit digital, let's talk a little bit about social media. You have over 108K followers on
109.
109. It's gone up. On Instagram, which gives you like influencer status.
Right.
So what does this title mean to you?
What does the title mean to me?
As an influencer, like what does like that mean to you?
Well, that whole thing is when I was working in magazines, I didn't have time to do that. And I saw a lot of these people who didn't have my training or weren't in these jobs sort of eating my lunch by having this influence or having these platforms. So I worked hard I decided I was going to put my street photography passion, into that and only shoot with my phone and try to build an audience with that. So, I mean, 109 is great, but it's not compared to some other people, but
it's good, but it's not that good.
But it's good because I don't have to go through anyone to put out content. That's the main thing for me. Whether I had 10 followers, it's better to have 109 because
you got out to more people. You're reaching more people. You're reaching a larger audience, but you don't have anyone to tell you can't post that because it's your own platform.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, because some of these niche publications, they reach 50,000 people. So, I've made friends through it internationally, or people are. Like I go to Japan, people are willing to help me because
of your
they
Instagram,
see that
because they see your work.
It legitimizes me. So some people they go like, "What's Severe Magazine?" When I worked there, we'd often make this joke. We would call calling from Severe Magazine, and we made this joke. It was like, might as well just say Hoogada Boogada Magazine. You don't know what we were talking about. But they can very easily say, "Well, who's this Todd Coleman guy?" Oh, okay, he's legitimate. So it's just another credential.
So let's discuss your recent project, Delicious Contents.
Right.
So what is Delicious Contents, and how did you come up with it?
Well, it's a food-focused digital agency, and I partner with my friend Jonathan Cohen, who's from the advertising world. He knows all about that. I knew about the food editorial world, which joined forces, but we do mainly branded content or work with brands. So it's advertising marketing for food brands.
So can you give us like an example of like what you've recently done?
Well, our main client has been Chobani. So for Chobani, we've made what are called hands and pans videos for Facebook.
And what's that? What's hands and pans?
Hands and pans videos are where there's no talent. There's no voiceover. The action, the narrative is all done kind of in a shadow box with hands and food happening only. When I first started shooting those, it was an easy way to do food video because you don't have to have the talent who's experienced on camera, which is a rare to find, and can make things more expensive and whatnot.
And what was like, I've obviously heard that you're starting like your own influencer network at Delicious Contents. Can you tell us about that?
Right. Well, it's one way. Everything in this world is marketing. Where we're dressed, where we talk, where we act, where we live. Everything we do is marketing. So this is one way to products, and everybody needs to market themselves, and obviously products need to market themselves so people buy them. And one of the ways nowadays to reach people is through these people who have their own audiences, just as before it would be a magazine or a TV network or something. And so it's just another way to market that. As I'm sort of in that space myself, I understand the value of it. And I understand people approach me, they want me to put stuff on my feed, or they want me to, like I did it for Budweiser. Budweiser wanted me to do 3 posts on my feed. So basically, it's really just a talent kind of cooperative. So I have a group of people that I've talked with, who I have relationships with. So when we have an opportunity to put them in work, video or otherwise, or to give us advice, or we can, it's just being in the talent business. It's basically just being a more modern version of being a talent agent.
So what is some advice you can give us, the students at Lehman College who want to make it in the industry?
Well, I mean, a very general, I mean, it's just, you have to work very hard and try to network and meet people. So we've talked about some of those things, doing an internship, doing anything it takes to do, reaching out to 1,000 people on LinkedIn just to get one response, to stay hopeful, because
Never lose hope.
never lose hope, because, but it's really, I mean, you have to create a network of people who can help you. You've done that, like you went at a very young age, really was an intern at the Food Network, and then they recommended me them to me, and then we met and I saw how you worked, and that happens, right? Then someone says to me, I got a request this week, like, do you know a food stylist for this cookbook? You're going to recommend people that you've worked with that you can trust that are also going to make you look good. But I'm only going to recommend the people that I know.
Exactly.
So you have to get to know as many people as possible. It's really just about getting to know as many people
So
as
it's
possible.
like who you know, not what you know,
Yeah.
or like a little bit of both.
Well, it's up to you to know it when you're there. So if they give you the shot and you can't do it, there's no one to blame but you. But you can't get that. Yeah, it's really about who you know.
Well, it surely has been a pleasure having this conversation with you, Todd. We have to wrap up this episode, but before we go, please tell our viewers where they can find you at Delicious Contents or follow you on social media.
On Instagram at Todd W. Coleman, and website for the business is deliciouscontentswithanS.com.
With an S. Thank you all for watching once again. I'm Jacqueline Triss, and if you want to see all the shows we've done this season, please visit bronxnet.org. So long from this season of Media Industries.